My name's Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi. I'm a Jewish member of the Labour Party, someone who's been very active in support of justice for Palestine for a very long time, as many Jews have been. And like so many sort of well-meaning people who care about justice and peace and freedom and so on, when Jeremy Corbyn, a long-standing member of Parliament on the left of the party, was elected as leader against all the odds, really, against expectations. This happened in 2015. A lot of us joined the Labour Party with great hope that we would now have somebody who understood the need for peace and justice as the principles on which foreign policy should be determined, and also social justice in the country where he was leader of the main opposition party against a conservative government. So, and for a number of years, there was this great feeling of hope and an upsurge of activism, mobilization. At least 200,000, maybe even 300,000 new people joined the Labour Party. Some young people who'd never been politically active before, some older people who'd been around for a while but were disillusioned and now felt that it was worth coming back and being active in the main opposition party in the country. The political establishment in the country went into overdrive, looking for ways to destroy the movement that was building. So even before he was elected leader, the media started to run stories about him having terrorist links, that he was a Czech spy. But one of the things for which he was very well known and liked on the left was his consistent support for justice for Palestine. And it was this particular aspect of his political thought and beliefs which was lighted upon, which was focused on by those who wished to bring him down and to crush the movement around him. And they used a tactic which the Israeli state and the Zionist movement has used for many years now, which is to suggest that anybody who is critical of Israel is actually threatening the identity of Jewish people, of Jews as Jews. In other words, they were putting together the idea of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. And this, they found, was a very powerful weapon. And so those of us who were on the left, who had Jewish backgrounds, who knew what this tactic was all about, we'd seen it in operation against pro-Palestinian activists for quite some time, we realised what was happening, and we formed a group called Jewish Voice for Labour with the intention of supporting opposition to all forms of racism, of course, including anti-Semitism, but giving people the arguments they needed to show that, first of all Jews are not Zionists, and certainly all Zionists are not Jews. In fact, we have this worldwide movement of Christian Zionism, which is much, much bigger than the Jewish population of the world. So we have this element combining with the establishment in this country, using a weapon that suggests that anybody who is critical of the state of Israel must be motivated by hatred of Jews. That's the allegation that is now widely made. And that therefore Jeremy Corbyn is enabling anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial in the party. And it's now become so bad that people on the right will quite unashamedly call this man, who is a gentle, peace-loving, anti-racist campaigner over many, many years, they will call him an anti-Semite quite blatantly. And in this situation, a number of us in Jewish Voice for Labour, and working with others on the left of the Labour Party, have been campaigning to get our ideas understood and recognised. I mean, they've been almost entirely wiped out in terms of media coverage. We were allowed a little bit of a voice when a TV program or a radio program or somebody writing an article thought, oh, well, we better pretend that we're listening to alternative viewpoints. So they would bring one of us on. I'm the media officer for Jewish Voice for Labour, so it was quite often me, but not only me. And we would be given 10 seconds to express our view, and then somebody would abuse us and shut us up. When Jeremy Corbyn was finally defeated and the movement around him very much weakened by defeat in the 2019 general election, the new leader that you'll have heard of, Keir Starmer, took over. And this was the moment for a resurgence of the right for all those within the Labour Party who were either very actively pro-Zionist or who were very frightened of everything that Corbyn represented. And they have been going into overdrive for the last 3 years, suspending and expelling people on the left, people who divert from the new direction that Keir Starmer is taking the Labour Party in, which is very much a direction of neoliberal economics, pro-NATO international politics. One young man was even suspended from membership of the party within almost immediately after making a speech at Labour Party conference last September, in which he criticised NATO. Members of the shadow cabinet, they were banned from standing on picket lines, because we have a wave of militancy in this country now, which is very welcome. It's great to see ordinary people having the confidence to go out and defend their rights. But Starmer has said, no, we do not want members of my cabinet appearing on these picket lines. So what's my role in all this, and why am I here? Well, because of Jewish Voice for Labour's high profile, we have mobilised around us others in the party who support the same ideals. And when there was an election for membership of the National Executive Committee earlier this year, my name was put forward, and I became part of a left-wing slate called Grassroots 5. You know, there was all sorts of attacks on me, and how could the left possibly put up somebody like this, who obviously is a self-hating Jew. But to everybody's surprise, I was actually elected. So at the end of August, beginning of September, the results were announced, and I became a member of the National Executive Committee. However, the new committee doesn't take its seat until the annual conference, which takes place at the end of September. And, well, surprise, surprise, on the 22nd of September, I received a notice of investigation and administrative suspension. And that meant that I was suspended from membership. They were going to investigate an allegation that I had committed a prohibited act. Now, one of the tricks that this new leadership is putting into place is that it adds little bits to the rules, which it then uses to entrap people on the left of the party. And in my case, they found out that a year earlier, I had spoken at a meeting, and the title of the meeting was McCarthyism and Starmer's Labour. It was a discussion about the way in which the party was crushing dissent and preventing people from discussing ideas that were not in line with the new leadership's direction. It so happened that it was part of a series of events organised by a number of groups on the left of the party, 3 of which had been proscribed, that is banned, by the party leadership just 2 months earlier. What they allege is that if you sign a petition or like something on Facebook or speak at a meeting organised by any of these groups, that means you are a supporter of those groups, and that is a prohibited act. Many of us have argued that this really doesn't indicate support in any common sense or logical meaning of the term. So I'm not saying that I'm opposed to the ideas of those groups that were prescribed. I think prescription is an authoritarian and draconian measure that shouldn't even happen at all. But the fact is that I am not a supporter, I'm not a member, I'm not a financial backer. Their names are Resist, Labour Against the Witch Hunt, and Labour in Exile Network. I'm not in any logical and common sense meaning of the word a supporter of those groups, but I did take part in a discussion they were organising about McCarthyism and Starmer's Labour, because I thought that was a very important subject. And as an active member of Jewish Voice for Labour, I'd had a lot of experience of supporting people and helping people and advising people who were victims of that very McCarthyism. So I was suspended, and the suspension occurred just before the Labour Party annual conference, at which the new National Executive Committee should have taken its seats. And I was at the conference, but I wasn't allowed in because I'd been suspended. So that was the situation at the end of September. The new National Executive met. I wasn't there. It then had a very significant meeting at the end of November, which I should have been at, but I wasn't because I'd been suspended, where decisions were going to be made about implementing a report called the Ford Report, which looked into the dysfunctional culture in the party and the way accusations of anti-Semitism have been factionally exploited in the party, and so on and so on. So it would have been a role that I would have been very proud and eager to play, but I wasn't there, so I couldn't do that. And on December the 15th, it happened to be my 70th birthday. I don't in any way suggest that this was deliberate. I think they just had a meeting of their disciplinary panel that day, and my name was on the list, and I was having a pleasant party with my friends in my house. And I suddenly saw some WhatsApp messages. We hear that you've been expelled. I had no idea I'd been expelled. How do people on Twitter and WhatsApp know about this? And it turned out that a certain journalist who is known for his hostility to anybody who was a supporter of Corbyn right back at the beginning writes for the Jewish News. He used to write for the Jewish Chronicle. They have very similar politics. Name of Lee Harpin. Somebody had leaked him the information about my expulsion. So before I read the private email, which was sitting in my inbox unknown to me, this was known to Lee Harpin before I knew about it, and he tweeted about it. Yes, so I was terminated, and there was immediately a lot of support from friends who were either still in the Labour Party and hoping to maintain the principles and values that Jeremy Corbyn had represented, and lots of people who had already left or been expelled themselves. And we've started a campaign for my reinstatement. I have submitted an appeal, and it's based on the fact that the suspension and expulsion, it was based on bias, hostility and prejudice against me as a person of the left, and in particular as a left-wing Jew, because we seem to be seen as a particular threat because we undermine the narrative about people on the left being anti-Semitic because they support Palestine. No, we refute that, and we do it very coherently. I mean, I hope that people listening to this they'll probably marvel at the extraordinary, the madness of it, really. And so the targeting of people on the left is relentless, and it is taking in a large number of Jewish people like myself. So we reckon that at least 60 people that we know of who are Jews have been either investigated or suspended or actually expelled for reasons that are in some way related to anti-Semitism. So we've got this major political party which is going to be going into a general election in 2024, maybe sooner, presenting itself as, a progressive party, an anti-racist party, and a party which is cracking down on anti-Semitism. And they are expelling Jews. The Jewish Voice for Labour website is a really good source of information there, and people can even read my appeal. Now, the questions come up about a member of the National Executive Committee called Luke Akehurst. He is well known within the pro-Palestinian movement because for many years now he's been, I think his title is Chief Executive of a group called We Believe in Israel. He's been one of the main proponents of the working definition, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism, which has been presented by people like Akehurst and others in the Zionist movement as the one and only definition that people have to use if they wish to show that they are genuinely opposed to anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, people like Akehurst have managed to force this IHRA definition onto many public bodies in this country. They're trying to get it adopted by universities, by local authorities, parliament. Political parties have adopted it. It's actually been presented to the United Nations as if it should be adopted by the entire world. And the problem with it is, and this is one Luke Akehurst's main thrust really, is that if you adopt this definition, any support for the boycott movement, any criticism of Zionism as such, any suggestion that Israel is the foundation of the Israeli state was a racist endeavor, any of these things are anti-Semitism and may not be said. So what this means for Palestinians is that they are completely gagged and silenced if people accept this definition. Our attitude towards people like him, and there's a group called the Jewish Labour Movement, which claims to represent all Jews in the Labour Party. It is affiliated to the party, which we are not. Our argument is that these people have the right to say what they believe and to argue their points and to debate. Of course they do, but we insist that we have the same right. Though there is a campaign going on now for my reinstatement, but as I said earlier, it really isn't just about me. It's not just about Jews in the Labour Party. It's about an attempt to wipe out the entire left. But as part of the campaign, there is a statement going around which has already got about 1,200 signatures after just a couple of days. I'm very gratified about this. And it calls for my reinstatement. It's available for people who are now or who have recently been members of the Labour Party to sign, and also for organisations like trade union branches, for example, within the Labour movement to sign, because we think it's really important that the question of how a biased and unjust disciplinary process is used to disenfranchise members who have elected a representative to the National Executive. So this is why we would very much like many people to sign the statement that's available for people to give their support and try and win some attention, try and explain to the media, to the general public in the UK, to people abroad who are interested in what's going on in the Labour Party, that there is something very sick and wrong about the party at the moment. So yes, that would be great.